On 5 News, the damning verdict on Russian cheating. The London Olympics are branded the most drugged ever. Scores of Russian athletes competed illegally, and their government helped them do it.
The Russian Olympic team corrupted the London Games on an unprecedented scale.
So how did they get away with it for so long? Also, police say 83 people are now being investigated for child abuse in football. How social media is fueling a big rise in young people self-harming. Enough to drive you mad as the amount of money councils make from parking fines rises by £60 million. And toys for the boys, but little girls are missing out, and it could harm their future careers. Hello, welcome to 5 News. I'm Matt Barbett. Russia has been accused of corrupting the 2012 London Olympics on an unprecedented scale by allowing its athletes to take performance-enhancing drugs. An extraordinary report by the World Anti-Doping Agency has revealed the true extent of a programme it says was run by the country's government. More than 1,000 sportsmen and women are alleged to have taken banned substances, with their cheating covered up by Russian officials. As Simon Weiger reports now, it says the deception has been going on for years.
We knew it was bad. Today we got to know the detail.
Over 1,000 Russian athletes competing in summer, winter and Paralympic sport. The desire to win medals superseded their collective moral and ethical compass. The Russian Olympic team corrupted the London Games on an unprecedented scale.
The McLaren report into state-sponsored doping details how positive samples were switched and how they were doctored with salt and coffee.
So the percentage breakdown between international federations is 84% of the summer sports and 16% are winter sports.
Former British runner Andrew Steele is one of the victims. At the 2008 Olympics, the 400 metres relay team was beaten to bronze by the Russians, who've only recently been disqualified.
People have talked about, what about the sponsorship money you could have gotten or the prize money, etc. Actually, none of that matters. What really matters is, in my athletic career, I had very few moments of satisfaction, actually, and that was the closest I got to feeling, oh, I did well here. We actually won something from this, and I didn't get to experience it. And money can't buy that. So, that's the real shame that I missed out on that one moment of satisfaction.
The first McLaren report in the summer led to a total ban from the Rio Olympics for Russia's athletics team. It sparked indignant outrage in Russia, but now the level of espionage is laid bare. At the 2011 World Championships, Jessica Ennis-Hill was cheated out of gold by Russian athlete Tatyana Chernova. She had her suspicions, and so did her coach, Tony Minicello. Today he told me it's clear that the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, needs greater funding.
The Russian laboratory, as a direct response to WADA's more stringent guidelines, they came up with this system, and this is how they operated. So if it's Russia doing it, is it inconceivable that maybe other countries are operating similar systems? Genuinely, I don't know.
The magic of London 2012 has been slightly tarnished. The good news is that of the 15 implicated medal winners, 10 have now been disqualified.
Simon, I think we suspected things were bad, but the sheer scale that we now realise of the cover-up is incredible. So what happens next?
Well, the International Olympic Committee wanted evidence, Matt, and they've certainly got it now. And in the last few minutes, the IOC has announced that they're going to retest all of those samples which have been kept from London 2012, and I should think quite a few other ones as well. Russian athletes still banned. That ban could well be extended to the Winter Olympics in just over a year's time. And all of this has relied completely on a whistleblower and journalists. It hasn't come from the doping agency. Big calls for greater funding, because clearly Russia were one step ahead of WADA, and a real problem with quarantining and so on. But that retesting will continue, and the athletes I've spoken to hope that that will be a deterrent, that you can be retested.
All right, Simon, many thanks. Now, police investigating allegations of widespread sexual abuse in football say they've identified 83 potential suspects involving 98 clubs at all levels of the game. The National Police Chiefs Council say victims were aged between 7 and 20 years old at the time of the abuse, while calls from new victims and people offering information are coming in all the time, as Dominic Reynolds reports.
It began with a decision from this man to talk about what happened when he was a young footballer. And in the 3 weeks since Andy Woodward went public, the allegations have accumulated fast. Football abuse investigations now involve nearly 100 clubs. And this is still only getting started, so says Pete Saunders, who survived abuse and now campaigns against it.
I think what we've seen so far is still just, sadly, the tip of a very large iceberg. And I think, given that we are a nation obsessed with soccer, I think it was only a matter of time before these revelations came out. I've long been aware that there are problems with this issue in not just soccer but all sports, wherever there are children.
We now know that the investigations into abuse in football are looking at 83 potential suspects at 98 different clubs. The clubs in question stretch across all tiers of football from amateur to the top flight, and the alleged victims range in age from 7 to 20 years old. The FA has launched an internal review and the Premier League has written to parents of young players. And for those who understand the world of abuse, just talking about it will prevent it.
The one thing that abusers of all kinds do not want is they do not want the likes of me as a survivor, or Andy Woodward, Paul Stewart, all the rest of them. They do not want people speaking out because it shines a spotlight on their murky, murky world.
Asking difficult questions about the past. It's had to happen in church, in broadcasting, and in our nation's parliament. The national game is the latest institution in the spotlight, but will it be the last? Dominic Reynolds, 5 News.
The mother of 2 young boys who were mauled by a dog has been praised for trying to stop the attack from happening. 4-month-old Archie Joe Darby was killed and his brother Daniel J was seriously injured when the Staffordshire Bull Terrier attacked them in their home in Essex in October. An inquest heard their mother Jade tried desperately to fight the dog away, but it pulled Archie from her arms. The driver of a bin lorry that crashed in Glasgow in 2010, killing 6 people, will not face private prosecution. Harry Clark blacked out behind the wheel of the vehicle after lying about his health to his employers. Criminal charges were never brought against him, and now judges have rejected a private case brought by victims' relatives. And the Conservatives have avoided a shock after winning the Sleaford and North Hykeham by-election. Caroline Johnson was elected with more than half the vote. Labour came 4th. It was brought about after the previous MP quit in protest at the government's handling of Brexit. For almost all young people these days, social media is an integral part of their everyday lives. But a charity is warning that it's causing many to be deeply unhappy and has led to a big rise in self-harming. The NSPCC says in the past year in England and Wales, nearly 19,000 children were admitted to hospital after harming themselves, the equivalent of 50 every day. Peter Lane has more.
Sometimes it's that the physical pain you're creating, it's bad, but it's not compared to the emotional pain you're feeling and the things that are going on in your mind that you really can't deal with.
In her teens, Bethany struggled to cope with her emotions, suffered from stress and began to self-harm. She kept it secret for a while, but was eventually hospitalised and believes that saved her life.
For me, before long, it became almost like an addiction, so it was feeling I had to do it or wasn't able to not do it. Even when I wanted to be stopping, it was really difficult. I wouldn't be here without that help and support from hospital and professionals and family and friends, and it was definitely needed.
Bethany's story is not unique. Figures show a significant rise in the number of children and young people admitted to hospital in England and Wales for self-harm.
What we're seeing is young people being hospitalised, so not young people just attending A&E, which means their self-harm has to be quite prolific actually for them to be hospitalised because of it, and that is really, really concerning for us, definitely as a charity.
It's thought a big part here is played by social media, that ever-growing pressure on young people to fit in, be popular and attain a certain image, and of course the impact of online bullying through the same sites.
A lot of the spike in self-harm cases can be laid at the door of social media. partly because it's just so omnipresent 24/7, and kids and young people can access that in the palm of their hand on their phones or in their bedroom, and it's very hard to escape from it. But at the same time, we have to recognise that 10 years ago they wouldn't have had the weight of this information. There's just so much coming at them that they almost don't know where to turn.
I have relapses, I think about it. It's an ongoing struggle, but it's definitely something that you can move on from, and it's so worth it when you get to a point where you are living life not controlled by this need to hurt yourself.
The message from Bethany is clear: you're not alone and you can get help. Peter Lane, 5 News.
Still to come on 5 News. How a record rise in parking fine revenue is driving people mad.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Where's all the money gone? Where is it?
How do you feel about that?
Not very good, because it doesn't go back into our society, does it?
And why the presents we buy our children could have an impact on what they end up doing in their careers. Hear more about that after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News. As many as 10,000 children from families on low incomes could be offered a free place to study at a private school. The new plan will be similar to the Assisted Places scheme set up by Margaret Thatcher when she was Prime Minister in the 1980s. It would involve schools and the government covering the extra costs. But as Layla Hayes reports, some say it doesn't go far enough.
It costs around £16,000 a year to come to Ashford School in Kent. But like many independent schools, it offers bursaries and scholarships. 11-year-old Sienna Bates is here on a sports scholarship and is highly impressed by the facilities.
We do water polo, swimming, running, hockey, which we're doing now, netball, which we're soon doing, but I've played it before. It's really fun. And I think we're doing rounders and cricket, pentathlon, shooting, because they do shooting as well. Just things like that.
17-year-old Rebecca Smelt receives a bursary, which means her fees are partially funded.
Personally, I wouldn't be able to come here without a bursary, and so I really think it's given me great opportunities I wouldn't get elsewhere. The experiences that I've had here, I would want anyone else to have, and I think everyone deserves them.
There are currently just over 485,000 pupils in independent schools in England. The Independent Schools Council now propose taking a further 10,000 means-tested pupils, part paid for by the government. But critics say this is a tiny amount and only covers around 2% of the current private pupil population.
There are 8.5 million children being educated in schools here, so 10,000 is kind of a drop in the ocean. It's nothing. I think what the government wants the private schools to do is help set up new good state schools or sponsor existing schools.
The proposal comes as private schools face a threat to their charitable status. But here at Ashford, they say they happily share facilities with the state sector.
We had a concert here last night. Many of those participating were from local state schools. Throughout the week, we have state primary schools coming to us to use our facilities, such as our swimming pool. I think we work very positively with a number of our neighbouring schools.
Scholarships and bursaries are welcome, but it's hoped that if more free places are offered, even more families will benefit from schools like this. Layla Hayes, 5 News.
Now, listen to this. In the past year, England's local authorities raked in more than £750 million from parking fines. Yes, you heard right. And that's a rise of £60 million in just a year. It's being put down to greater competition for spaces, and councils say the cash is reinvested. But as Ruth Liptrot explains now, it's little consolation to those who've been caught out.
Nowadays, you can spend as much parking your car as you do running it. And if you get a ticket, you're seriously out of pocket. For councils, though, parking charges and fines mean big bucks. Last year alone, councils in England made £756 million in profit from charging people to park. London generated the most money with almost 56 million made. Brighton and Hove made just over 20 million, while Nottingham generated just over 13.5 million in profit. By law, the money made has to be reinvested into improving transport, but these motorists are unimpressed.
Well, that's ridiculous. Where's all the money gone? Where is it?
I'm not shocked.
How do you feel about that?
Not very good, because it doesn't go back into our society, does it?
Well, as a motorist, it's tough, but it seems like we are the ones that are paying for everything, really.
And the RAC understand how they feel.
I'm afraid I think if you ask almost any driver, they will have some story to tell about how they feel they've been unfairly treated when it comes to parking. And they want to know that if there is a profit or a surplus made from parking activities, that money is being wisely spent.
But according to the local government association, $750 million is not enough to fix what needs to be done.
It sounds like a huge number, but it's actually tiny in comparison to the amount of money needed to get our roads back into proper condition. That's £12 billion, So, it's a big number, but it's not the biggest number.
Some of the money in that pot has come from this guy who found that parking restrictions on display were changed after he'd parked his car. Yep, it's hard to make out, but the CCTV shows a traffic warden changing the signing, then giving him a ticket. Joseph was given a £65 fine and had to pay £200 to get his car back after it was towed.
You start questioning your own self. Was that sign there when I parked there saying June, July? Could someone really change a sign? And I wondered perhaps if it was another driver who'd maybe picked up a sign innocently, but to know it was the actual civil enforcement officer changing it himself for their own favour of the council, for them to pocket stuff out of it, it's disgusting, to be honest.
Joseph has yet to get his money back, even though an independent tribunal ruled that Newham Council were in the wrong. But now when he parks, he takes a photo of the restrictions, just in case. Ruth Liptrot, 5 News.
Now, doctors in California have successfully managed to separate 2-year-old conjoined twin girls. Erica and Eva Sandoval were joined at the abdomen and the chest and shared much of their lower body, including a liver and a bladder. The surgery involved at least 50 doctors, as you can see, and took 18 hours to do. The girls are now recovering in intensive care. 21st Century Fox has made a bid to take over the broadcaster Sky for £18 billion. Sky was almost taken over in 2010, but it was called off during the phone hacking saga. And the world has been remembering astronaut John Glenn after his death at the age of 95. He became the first American to orbit the Earth in 1962, 7 years before man landed on the moon. If that wasn't enough, he was also a war veteran and a US senator for more than a quarter of a century. If you're planning on Christmas shopping for little ones this weekend, then what will you be buying them? Fashion and dolls for a girl, tech and mechanics for a boy, maybe? But it seems we're falling into a trap. A study has found the vast majority of toys aimed at girls are pink, perhaps no surprise there, but only a fraction involve things like science and engineering. And it says that is sending out the wrong message. Here's Minnie Stevenson.
Walking down the toy aisles with a wish list. Most people will find themselves here this Christmas. Pink for girls and blue for boys? An old-fashioned stereotype, you may ask. Well, it seems the trend for gendered toys is alive and well in Britain, according to a major study. One of the world's largest engineering institutions is warning parents against buying toys which typecast, saying it could be putting girls off careers in technology and beyond.
Now, if, like me, you're feeling a little bit stressed about what to buy this Christmas, researchers have also found that nearly 90% of toys that were pink were aimed at girls, whereas toys with more of a maths or science theme were 3 times more likely to be aimed at boys. And still, I don't know what to buy.
Campaigners say toys should be toys.
Because toys are marketed with pink and with blue, or indeed divided into girls and boys, we're sending a message to kids as to what's appropriate for them to play with. And doing that, we could be limiting their opportunities to find something that they really love.
So with Christmas fast approaching, here at Smith Toy Store, we want to find out whether our discerning shoppers are swayed by stereotypes.
What kind of toys do you like?
Blue, red and pink.
And you like pink? Very diplomatic answer.
My girl plays with both. She plays with action figures, boys' action figures, cars. But then she'll play with Frozen and dolls' houses,
So for you, it doesn't matter what colour something is?
Colour is not a...
No.
It's a toy. A toy is a toy.
But campaigners say stereotyping starts in the toy aisles and comes back to bite later in the boardroom. Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
Well, that's just about it from us for now, but join me in an hour for 5 News Tonight when I'll be meeting the very special star of a new movie. Owen Suskind stopped talking when he was just 3 years old. He was diagnosed with autism, and his parents were told that he might never actually talk again. He retreated into himself and his favourite Disney movies, but remarkably, they turn out to be the key to bringing him back into the world. Owen's journey is now the subject of a new film, Life Animated. I'll be talking to Owen and his mum, Cornelia, about what is a remarkable story. But that's just about it for now. As you heard there, I'll be back at 6:30 and Sangeeta will have updates for you throughout the evening. Chris Page has the full weather forecast for you next. Hope it's going to be a nice weekend. For now, thanks for your company. Bye-bye.